my name is Tony. Certain films are films of firsts. First film to do this, show that, do the other. Unforgiven is a film of lasts, which is a characteristic I'll explore and explain later. For now, just know that this review is one I've been putting off for a long time. Not because I don't like or have anything against the film, because I'm right at the opposite end of that spectrum. I love and respect it immensely, but it's one of those I couldn't get a clear handle on, figure the best way to approach it. Every time I thought about doing it, I'd find something to distract me. I'm very good at avoidance, worked for me all my life, but there comes a point when you just need to crack the whip on yourself, usually on the maid's night off. So this is me knuckling down, biting the bullet, grasping the nettle, triggering the snowflake and buttering the Brando. Simply had to be done. I've read a lot of reviews, digested a lot of critique and theorising about Unforgiven, but I'm going to set all that to one side and concentrate on my own feelings and interpretations of what the film does, how it does it, and what it means. A focus on the whole thing as an artistic entity rather than a piecemeal analysis of its constituent parts individually. To that end, with respect to the technical elements, the casting, the acting, the direction, the writing, the score, the cinematography, editing, set design, and so on, they're as close to flawless and simply of the highest, most appropriate and sympathetic caliber in the context of the narrative. Speaking of which, this is what the film's about and who the main characters are, summarised with as much brevity as I can muster, which ain't a lot. In the town of Big Whiskey in Wyoming, young prostitute Delilah Anna Thompson has her face knife slashed by an itinerant cowboy known as Quick Mike, David Mucci. This was punishment for her spontaneously giggling when she saw his microscopic penis. The girl was inexperienced and didn't know any better, but now she is disfigured for life. Town Sheriff Little Bill Daggett, Gene Hackman, is a sadistic tyrant with a skewed concept of justice. As punishment, he decrees that Quick Mike and his accompanying colleague Davy Rob Campbell need to turn over several of their horses to brothel owner Skinny Dubois Anthony James as compensation for loss of earnings. Skinny figures that no one will pay to have sex with a girl with a scarred face. Sensitive guy. The lack of justice or compensation for the girl herself incenses the rest of the women in Skinny's stable. Led by mature prostitute Strawberry Alice Francis Fisher, they club together $1,000 bounty for whoever kills the two cowboys. Little Bill isn't best pleased as he reasons it will attract all manner of killers and lowlifes to his town looking to collect. As events turn out, it's worse than he anticipates. In Hodgman County, Kansas, a youth calling himself the Schofield Kid, James Wolvert, turns up at the failing pig farm of widower William Money, Clint Eastwood. Money has two young kids, a boy and a girl, and his farm is going under fast as swine fever takes hold. Money used to be a notorious gunman and murderer for hire, but changed his ways and reformed on meeting his wife. The kid wants him as a partner in killing the two cowboys and collecting the bounty. Money initially refuses, however, after reflecting on his dire situation and contemplating the impact on his children, he contacts his longtime friend and neighbour Ned Logan Morgan Freeman, once a fellow outlaw, and together they set out to catch up with the Schofield Kid and pursue the bounty. The three men are on a collision course with Little Bill Daggett, the cowboys they are aiming to kill, and the townspeople of Big Whiskey. However it ends, it won't end well, at least not for everyone. In common with many other revisionist westerns, Unforgiven is an exercise in the deconstruction of traditional western movie mythology and painting a more unflattering and ultimately disturbing picture. The black and white vision of the West and its heroes and villains is subjected to complex moral ambiguity and neo-realistic realignment. It's nothing that hasn't been done before, but the mechanisms used in the direction, writing, characterization and performances provide a richer type of experience with emotionally affecting impact. Will Money is psychologically haunted by the man he used to be and the ghosts of those he has killed, memories he can barely suppress. It's a form of PTSD from which he can never be completely free. He has killed men, women and children, and nothing will change that. A former alcoholic, when fueled by drink, he would murder on a whim or for no specific reason. Throughout the film he emphasizes repeatedly, "I ain't like that anymore," and how his wife changed changed him from a directionless killer into a loving husband and father. But we, the audience, know or strongly suspect that the road he's now on is going to eventually take him back to the thing he once was, because deep down he knows or strongly suspects the same thing. For reasons unknown, Ned has always been his friend. Even when everyone else gave him a wide berth, was mortally afraid of him, Ned was the only one who stayed close. Maybe out of a sense of self-preservation, but that seems inadequate in telling the whole story. There's a loyalty going beyond that. He remains the only friend Money has. The Schofield kid claims to be fast with a gun and a killer of many men. He's boastful about it. It doesn't take Money and Ned long to figure out that he's nearsighted. The kid confesses to needing the money to buy glasses so he can continue his career as a gunslinger. This feeds into the ever-present theme in the narrative of people not being who or what they seem to be, or how they present. Underpinning the challenging of mythology is the introduction of English Bob Richard Harris, an affectatious and flamboyant gunslinger of old, who travels with a personal biographer, W. Beauchamp, Saul Rubinek. Beauchamp buys into Bob's tall tales and recounts them with even more embellished embroidery into dime-store novels in which Bob is the slick and deadly hero, the Duke of Death, or Duck of Death as Little Bill insists emphatically. Bob lands in Little Whiskey chasing the bounty. He is an old acquaintance and one-time rival of Bill, who it seems was also something of a gun for hire before drifting into law enforcement. When Bob contravenes the town's anti-gun policy, Bill uses it as an excuse to give him a violent and savage beating, then throws him in a cell. Reading and mocking one of Beauchamp's lurid accounts, he begins telling the biographer some home truths about events depicted in his pulp novels. More dismantling and reconstruction of mythology into a convincing, honest storyboard. Beauchamp is intrigued by Bill's insights. So when a humiliated Bob is kicked out of town the next day, he elects to stay behind and use Little Bill's authentic recollections as source material. Bill, a narcissistic bully and egotist at heart, is only too happy to oblige and correct Beauchamp's romanticized misconceptions. When Money, Ned and the kid arrive in town in a rainstorm, Money is ill with a fever. They enter Skinny's saloon and Ned and the kid go upstairs to meet with the working girls, whilst Money sits shivering in the bar. This is the first confrontation with Little Bill. He interrogates Money, who gives his name as Hendershot. Bill disbelieves him, finds he has a pistol on him, and again uses this as an excuse to deliver another appalling beating, one that results in Money having to crawl outside to collapse in the rain. We know by now how much of a monster Money is or was, because he's told us. Little Bill, though, is revealing the kind of monster he is, a cruel sadist with a badge, deriving pleasure from kicking defenseless people half to death, drunk on his own authority and sense of self-righteous impunity. In a deserted barn outside the town, Will is nursed back to health by the prostitutes, tended to by Delilah. He is tormented by fever dreams of rotting corpses and his past victims. It's the torture of the damned. The heroes are not heroes, they are crude men chasing a bounty set by prostitutes for revenge against two other men, one of whom is innocent of any crime. Hardly heroic or honourable, but desperate men in desperate times do desperate things. That is no justification from me, just an observation. The prostitutes are pretty much helpless victims of misogyny, treated as less than second-class citizens, objectified, chattel, powerless in terms of warranting anything approaching justice or consideration as victims by a crooked system. They are angry and frustrated. It is wholly understandable why they reacted as they did. The truth itself becomes a twisted tale and gathers embellishments with each retelling. Chinese whispers. By the time the Schofield kid tells it, not only was the girl's face scarred, but breasts were also cut off and her genitalia mutilated. Kind of man who does something like that to a woman deserves to die. Reinforces justification. When in fact the bottom line is, the victim doesn't matter to us any more than she does to the law. We just want the money. The coup de grace for Unforgiven is in its incredible evocation of the effects of violence and killing on both the victim and the perpetrator. This is the emotional axis upon which the film pivots and succeeds above and beyond any other I've seen. Unforgiven makes you feel it. I mean, really feel it. Money, Ned and the kid ambush the cowboys from high ground. Ned, who is the rifleman, is designated to shoot Davy, but Ned falters, shoots the man's horse instead. Whilst they're pinned down, Ned confesses he can't kill anymore. The kid is visually challenged. It falls to Money to take charge of the rifle, and eventually he manages to hit Davy, killing shot through the gut, but he doesn't die straight off. He slowly bleeds out, writhing and screaming in agonizing pain, whilst all parties wait it out. We, the audience, wait it out too, and are likewise implicated. This is not sanitized, easy, quick and clean, bang bang, you're dead. This is a dirty, filthy, traumatic business that leaves a lasting spiritual stain. Nothing honourable or glorifying. Ned realises he can't do it, can't be part of it, so heads back to Kansas and his Native American wife. Money and the kid go after Quick Mike, who's hiding out on a ranch. Because of the kid's poor eyesight, it is decided that he will have to kill Mike up close. He blasts him to ignominious death in the shithouse. Money and the kid wait at a junction outside of town, whilst one of the girls brings them the bounty money. She delivers the news that Little Bill intercepted Ned, flogged and then tortured him to find Money and the kid's whereabouts. Ned has died of his injuries. The kid is broken, crushed by remorse and guilt, sickened to his core, and admits he had never killed a man before, despite his boast to the contrary. He swigs whiskey from a bottle, shakes, cries, swears he'd rather be poor, ragged and blind than kill a man again. He tells Money he's nothing like him. Money takes his pistol, gives him the bounty, and tells him to take his share to his kids and Ned's to his wife. Money takes the whiskey bottle and starts to drink. Like Jekyll quaffing his personality transforming potion, he is summoning the ultimate Mr. Hyde. The devil himself is coming to big whiskey. The whole film has been building to this climax. A masterfully orchestrated, exhilarating, punishing, frightening confrontation in Skinny's saloon, where Ned's corpse is displayed in an upright coffin outside, and Little Bill and his men are within with the right of Beauchamp. Money rides up with a pistol and shotgun as the rain pours down. There are echoes of High Plains Drifter as he enters the building and brings hell and death with him. It is one of the best set pieces of any Western ever made. Films to see before you die. This is one of them. Even if you hate Westerns, you should still see it for the experience. And if you care anything about cinema, of course. I said earlier it was a film of lasts, and now might be as good a time as any to explain that. Clint Eastwood, who made his name in the Western genre, first on TV in Rawhide, then in the movies, knew it would be his last true Western. Anything coming after would just be repetition, he felt. He dedicated it to Sergio Leone and Don Siegel. Those two would have no doubt approved. It was the last great Hollywood Western. It was the last great old Hollywood movie, period. And it was the last word on the deconstruction of the Western mythos. Only fitting that the man with no name, Clint Eastwood, actor and director, should have it. He deserved it. It was his due. There have been spoilers up until now because it's not easy attempting a review of any depth without them to back it up. The major spoilers are up next, so you might want to look away or skip ahead.
No more heroes anymore.
There are no real heroes, only flawed and broken humans and a lot of villains. Will Money is a damaged monster redeemed by the love of a good woman, but still damned by a past he can never escape. What sets him apart from the likes of Little Bill is self-awareness. He knows what he is, and what he is evil and bad. He doesn't want to be that way, tries to resist his violent impulses. Little Bill, on the other hand, has no self-insight. He builds a wooden house, even though he lacks functional carpentry skills, and the place leaks like a sieve. He refuses to acknowledge his shortcomings. The house must be good because he built it and he's Little Bill, and he is the law. When Beauchamp tells him,
Yeah, maybe you should just hang the carpenter. What?
not knowing it was Little Bill, his reaction is one of scowling offence, indignation and puzzlement. He taunts, goads and brutalises those he can wield power over. English Bob, Ned, Money, even at the end as he lies on the saloon floor bleeding out, and Money levels a shotgun at his face. He protests,
I don't deserve this.
I don't deserve this. Money's response before firing,
Deserves got nothing to do with it.
deserves got nothing to do with it. I've encountered complaints that it's slow and overlong, and I don't find either to be the case or at all detrimental. Sure, it gradually builds up, carefully tells its story, draws its characters with precision and craft, delivers with superb dialogue, engaging anecdotes and detailed backfill. I've also encountered the critical opinion that cites the English Bob episode as an unnecessary inclusion. How do these people miss the vital significance of it? How do they not grasp its importance? To me, it's obvious for two very obvious reasons. It illustrates how sadistic and violent Little Bill is, how pitiless and vengeful, and it brings Beauchamp into the narrative, a hack writer with no real concept of the harshness and reality of frontier life, a man who writes stories glorifying murderous criminals as pioneering heroes and men of honour and courage. The opposite is true. Many are cowards, liars, moral deviants and low-life scum. Initially Little Bill and later Will Money demolish his illusions with doses of stark reality, and in so doing embeds a critical touchstone of the narrative.
No more heroes anymore.
No more heroes anymore, only survivors. Against the odds, with luck and by virtue of sheer drunken, cold-blooded, murderous wrath, Will Money slaughters a bar full of people. When he gets on his horse to ride away, the rain teeming down, the townspeople cower and hide in fear. Those with guns too scared to risk a shot at the devil in case they miss. He leaves behind a list of threats and what he'll do to them if they try to stop him or if they fail to bury Ned with due respect. The prostitutes are aghast, emotionally traumatized by the events they put in motion. Then, in an unhurried fashion, Will Money rides away, fading into the night. There is a lyrical and touching footnote explaining how Money's mother-in-law makes the journey to the pig farm to pay her respects at the last resting place of her only daughter. She finds it deserted. Money and the children are gone, perhaps to San Francisco, where it is rumoured he prospered in dry goods. There is no clue left behind to explain why her only daughter chose to marry such a violent and intemperate killer of men, women and children. I could continue for hours, but I don't want this to become any more boring for anyone than it has to be. Unforgiven is the last great American movie. I don't see there being another. That time has passed and the people with the means to achieve such things gone with it one way or another. I don't care about the 4 Oscars it won. They don't mean anything. Perhaps more relevantly, it was selected for entry onto the US National Film Registry by the Library of Congress for being culturally or historically or aesthetically significant, a more appropriate accolade or acknowledgement. It has lost none of its power and potency, and if anyone was ever in any doubt regarding Eastwood's status as a serious filmmaker, all the evidence to dispel that notion is included herein. If you haven't seen it, I think you should, and if you have, you'll already know where you stand. Thanks most sincerely for your time and attention. Please feel free to do whatever you choose to do next. Hit like, don't like, comment, subscribe, check out my early access Patreon thing, or even make a welcome financial contribution via the thanks button. Until we meet again, take good care of yourselves.